Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. I am Jonathan Q. On the side of the prosecution. I would like to thank the jurors for their dutiful attention today in doing their sacred obligation for the justice of my client, Mr. Charlie Brown. This is a story of not only a breach of trust, a breach of promise, but also a breach of contract. Now let me start off with a story. Now imagine yourself, my client actually, Mr. Brown, coming out from a hard day's work of class. He goes over to the field where he sees his friends, Mrs. Van Pelt, Snoopy, and Linus. As per usual, Charlie Brown, my client, wants to participate in the activities that his three friends are doing. And that day, they were playing football. Now, he didn't want to disturb his friends too much, but he walked over and he was, as usual, curious to play, but he always knows that Mrs. Van Pelt, as usual, will always offer him to kick the ball, but then in the end, trick him away. But this time, as he asked to join, Mrs. Van Pelt changed her story. She claimed that she had a document that was signed that would allow him to actually kick the ball this time. Now let's not forget that this was an agreement set out. Mrs. Van Pelt, she gave him an offer, and Mr. Brown had a choice to accept that offer. And of course he did. He accepted it on the premise of kicking the ball. Now according to this document, according to this exchange, Mrs. Van Pelt is to offer the ball, Mr. Charlie Brown is to kick the ball. Mr. Brown tried to kick the ball, didn't get the outcome that he wanted. So obviously this exchange was kind of broken. It's a little, yeah, so let us not forget that this was a breach of contract and a breach of promise. Before I continue, I would like to introduce my first witness. Now called to stand Linus, one of Mr. Brown's close friends, and he will testify that he did indeed hear the agreement of Mrs. Van Pelt offering Mr. Brown to kick the ball. But then in the end, the contract was broken, which he will testify to, and Charlie Brown kicked the ball, but missed because Mr. Van Pelt pulled away. Next, I will also call to stand Snoopy Dog, who was also Charlie Brown's close friends, who was present at the time of incident. Now Snoopy will also confer with the story of Linus, so that story is indeed true. Now the defense will most likely tell you that, you know what, I just messed up my entire story. I forgot something.
I can edit the video.
Okay. Now the defense will tell you that the document that Mrs. Van Pelt procured was not notarized and therefore it was not legally set by standards. But let us not forget that an agreement is still an agreement, and that Mrs. Van Pelt, through word of mouth, offered Mr. Brown to kick the ball, and Mr. Brown accepted that offer by going through the action of kicking the ball, and that a document does not need to be notarized in order for it to be legal. At the end of the day, we expect the jurors to procure a verdict of guilty towards Mrs. Van Pelt on the accounts of betrayal, a breach of promise, a breach of trust, and a breach of contract. Thank you for your attention.